we have a national debt of over $11 trillion. And I project that over the next 10 years, unless something dramatic happens, it's going to get worse and worse. Something dramatic needs to happen. And when we have a conservative representative saying, I had to vote for it or we would have had to shut down the government, that is the wrong answer. So the first thing that I will do on balancing the budget is proposing a constitutional amendment that says, unless we're in a time of national emergency declared by the President and ratified by 2/3 members of the House and the Senate, the budget must be balanced every year. Now, I got an interesting question from a member of the media. And he said, General Skoch, don't you think that's a high bar? Don't you think it's a high bar to require 2/3 majority to declare an emergency? Folks, I guarantee you that if we did not have that safeguard in place, that today would be regarded as an emergency, and we would keep spending money the way we're spending it. So that's platform plank 1 under the budget. Now the second platform plank, and you all should be getting these in hard copy. We have copies for you here. But the second is, I think we need to do in the government what every business in the United States of America does, and that's pay people based on their performance. Right now, every member of Congress earns $174,000 a year, irrespective of what's going on with the budget. Every member of Congress says, okay, that's what it takes, we'll keep doing what we're doing, but we're going to pass an unbalanced budget. So the second budget platform plank is, you know what? Let's measure how much the budget is in deficit, and let's pay members of Congress and the President an amount that represents that. You can do the math, and it's up here for you. If we're spending half our budget out of made-up money, and we're saying we're at about a 50% deficit this year, which just boggles the mind, well then I think they ought to get half a paycheck. And if they can balance it, great. Okay, next chart. Now, you may be aware of this little process, and it's called earmarks. Now, as you may know, there is a set process for spending federal money. You may not believe that, but I promise you there is one. And each department, and I've got a bit of experience in the Department of Defense, each department every year puts together a budget. And the budget goes to the President, and then the President forwards it to the Hill, and the Hill says, okay, we're going to appropriate this money, and later we will authorize that money, and you can spend it. And in, for example, the Department of the Interior budget, you would expect to see budget items for things like national parks. And in the Department of Defense budget, you can imagine what's there. You know, airplanes, tanks, ships, those kinds of things. Well, Congress figured out long ago that if they've got a little pet project, if they write their little rules for how they do it on the Hill, they can take something for a driver's training academy in Arkansas and put it in the Department of Interior budget, and they kind of wink and nudge at each other, and they go, let's just let this go through. There were 10,000 earmarks last year. Now, it was about, $10, $20 billion. And my good friend Michael Smith, who happens to be up flipping the charts for me this morning, said, isn't it a shame that when we hear $20 billion, we go, well, that's not really a lot of money. Folks, it is a lot of money. And this process needs to stop. If you've got a bill that has to do with the Department of Interior, it ought to be in that bill. If you've got a proposal that has something to do with the Department of Transportation, it ought to be in their appropriation or authorization bill. But let me give you even a more blinding fact. A lot of these earmarks don't even have the legislators' names associated with them. They have agreed that they can have secret earmarks. And that is just wrong, and it needs to end. Now, I will tell you, this is an area that our representative and I have a disagreement on as well, because he participates in earmarks. And he will tell you, but I bring good things. I bring a technology lab to the University of Arkansas. But let me offer this insight. when I sat at the Pentagon and did budget drills and we're deciding what to spend, we've got a list this long of things we need to buy, but we only get this much money. So we go through an exasperating process and we say, is this really more important than that? Is that more important than this? And you work up a priority list. But then some representative would come in and say, got an earmark, and it's going in here. And we're going, you messed up our whole budget process because that's not as important as what's up here. And they say, well, but I want it in my district. And when we get these things in our district, we go, hooray, our representative brought us something. Or hooray, our senator brought us something. But guess what? That's going on 435 places all over the country. And we're saying we got some money. Well, of course you got some money. You paid a bunch of money. So that process needs to stop. We need to end earmarks now. Now, this is another one that our representative and I disagree on. And I will tell you that Congressman Bozeman voted yes on the bailout of Wall Street banks. He voted yes to take $700 billion of federal money and authorize it as loans to these banks that were in trouble. That's a good move. But let's talk about that. Here we've got a bank, and as you know, banks borrow money from people, or, you deposit your money in the bank, and then they loan that money to other people. They pay you a little bit of interest, they charge the people that are borrowing money a little bit more interest, and that's how their business works. Sometimes banks do very well. Sometimes banks make very poor decisions, and they go into risky things, and they loan money to people that they probably shouldn't be loaning money to. My question is, why are we loaning money to banks that have mismanaged their affairs? Now, I will also tell you that the congressman and I had a good, peaceful, and friendly discussion about this. And he said, I was afraid the banks would fail. Well, folks, many of those banks have failed anyway after they got a lot of our money. And they don't need to be subsidized. Now, we also don't need to be owning majority shares of General Motors or Chrysler. Free enterprise means free enterprise. Free enterprise doesn't mean we pick winners and we shoot weak partners or weak industry people. And that's what we're doing. Can you imagine sitting on the board of directors of Ford Motor Company today and having some investors that have given you money to turn into capital or gains, and sitting there and looking across the street at General Motors and saying, they've got an endless bank account. They can take government money as much as they want, as long as they want, and they're probably going to keep doing that. Now, we all are celebrating cash for clunkers, which apparently has put a big spike on sales. But let me tell you, watch the fourth quarter numbers, because I guarantee you that what is going to happen is we've seen this spike in demand, and the next quarter we're going right back to where we were. It is not the government's job to see to the success of individual businesses. Now, incidentally, and I've had this thought, if you look at what happened in the housing market, and you look at what happened with people buying houses that they might not have ought to have bought, what we did